Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucas. It's great to be here, everyone that's tuning in. And as Lucas mentioned, I'm the founder and director of So Crispy Media. We are a visual effects company. We do high-end visual effects for digital games and TV and film. So today we're going to be mainly talking about our Chalk Warfare project, as Lucas brought you up to speed, but I'm going to go through and actually show you a little bit about this project. And we've got an awesome PowerPoint to go ahead and show. And by the end of this, we'll also have some live demo in Engine to be able to show as well with some of the media that we're going to be sharing here today. So we'll kick it off. So we're really going to be showing you a glimpse into the journey of producing our video game based off of our IP. Now, if you're not familiar with this IP, you're going to learn about it in the next video here. But this is a pre-established IP that we have on YouTube, and it's called Chalk Warfare. So we're going to cue the video up.
With over 350 million views online and hundreds of thousands of comments, most of them very sweet. Besides this person over here, I don't know what their problem is. Someone even remade an entire episode of ours in Minecraft. Whoa! What the f, dude? Get a life!
In the past, I've presented Chalk Warfare by So Crispy Media a couple of times on this show. Their third installment of the series, which dropped this week, is by far the best.
It's a series built by the audience for the audience. I mean, you've seen the films, you've left suggestions of weapons, and we've responded. It may have taken several years, but we did respond. But this is the most requested comment of all. We get it. You want a game. Well, you've got it.
Glenn? What is this? I did not ask for this, Glenn. What is that, Times New Roman? That's the best that you could do? The fans have waited 10 years for this, Glenn. 10 years for this, and you're early. How are you? Welcome to the game. The Chalk Warfare game! That's right. That's right, Glenn. Get up.
So what you guys saw there was actually the intro to the game demo that we've created, and it's exclusive to our fans at the moment. And that entire intro runs in Engine. It's actually the intro to the actual game tutorial. And it introduces the series for anyone who might not know. So we thought it was a fun video to be able to share with you today. But if you're not familiar with the series, it's it relies on creativity where teams draw weapons with chalk and they pull them out of the wall. So it's very unique. And through this series that we've been creating over the years, there has been tons of comments asking to turn this into a game. An insane amount of people wanting to see this into a playable reality. And we had the demand, but it always lived in a 2D format. And over the years, we decided that we wanted to take this step into bringing it into interactive, specifically as our company started to work more in interactive as tools like Unreal Engine and using Autodesk to bring, the medium or the media that we were making in standard passive formats into Unreal Engine. We realized this was something that we were very interested in doing. So it was actually around 2017 that we started very early prototypes of building this game, but actually entered production around 2023. But the demand here existed, and we had this choice to, make it a reality. So the big thing that we had to do as a team was figure out how we were actually going to turn, what you see at the top, if you watch the series, this experience that you have as a viewer, into something that's actually playable that you see down below. And you can see some of our in-game footage there. And today we're basically going to be walking you through the process that we've done and the process that we've gone through over these past several years to do this. And this talk will have 3 major touch points here. It won't just be tech. So we're going to actually start with just adapting your idea into the new medium. Then we're going to get into kind of these technical limitations, showing you what it's like having this crossover for us as our team's been going through this, and also what it's like making even just that intro demo, which we're going to be able to really showcase to you guys And then on top of this, just the how and why you should bring your audience with you. We've got some very fun case studies to show as we've been doing this with our audience, and there's been such a cool response. So we're going to be sharing that with you here today. Now, if you're watching this talk, it's obviously for, there's a vast array of people this is for, but filmmakers or IP holders that might be interested in making this jump across mediums. If you're a UE developer, or if you're a software, or if you use software like Autodesk, any of the Autodesk tools, and you are in an interactive pipeline, and then anyone just interested in future media pipelines. So now, before we jump in, I wanted to take a quick minute to show our reel and just briefly describe who we are to give a little more context of our team and where we came from and how we got here. So we mentioned that we have our YouTube channel. So we've got a sizable audience there, and that's been the primary medium for our content. And largely, we produce a lot of our content on YouTube, and then we do a lot of work with clients and other people as well. We've done previs for HBO's season 1 of The Last of Us. We do a lot of work with other YouTubers, namely Mr. Beast. And we've basically built our studio around creative content that we're able to produce with our own IP on our YouTube page, as well as doing this content that's client-based outside of our YouTube sphere as well. And I've got a reel here without audio that we can share just to show a little bit of what that work looks like. And there's a little bit of chalk warfare that you'll be able to see, specifically right here if you're familiar with the films. And it also shows our capabilities with previs. So our company has largely been in the world of marrying high-end visual effects on a cheaper scale budget to be able to pull off kind of the impossible in the digital sphere. Specifically, you can see this was a project we did with Samsung, and a little bit more chalk warfare. And in this reel, you're also going to see a little bit of our work that we do with live virtual production, specifically interactive. And this is really the start of how we got into using Unreal Engine as an application for our actual, passive media. Because Unreal Engine really is built for games, and it's very new as of the past, 5 years. You can see right here, this is all in Unreal Engine. As of the past 5 years, Unreal has really been a tool that a lot of filmmakers have been embracing, and it's been quite cool to see. And it's allowed us to kind of bridge this gap between storytelling and technology with interactive, where you're using stuff that a lot of people might not consider production ready, right? But it's getting to that point. So how did we go from filmmaking to game dev, as I mentioned? Well, it actually all started back in 2016. We were working on content specifically for virtual reality. And if any of the audience members here were a part of virtual reality content back in the 2016, the Oculus Rift days, it was a pretty wild time. It was not easy to produce filmmaking, or rather just produce films in stereo VR, nodally, right? It was a lot of work. You're basically making what felt like the equivalent of 6 visual effects projects. And we actually worked with Google Daydream to produce several projects in this format utilizing their new camera. And from that, we realized the power of simply using a real-time engine because you have 6 degrees of freedom when you're in VR. And that's actually what led our team to start using Unreal Engine and utilizing the tools that we use with Autodesk and all these different software companies to be able to actually bring it into Engine and just use Unreal as our primary render engine. And then ultimately that led us into 2021, where the virtual production screen started to become a big thing. We started working with a lot of clients that wanted to use virtual production, namely a lot of music videos. And then on top of that, we also assisted with a virtual production pipeline for previs with HBO's The Last of Us. And this kind of solidified our role of utilizing the engine in, a pipeline, which became quite an interesting case scenario for a visual effects company jumping from a more traditional passive software experience into a more interactive software experience. So if there's anything to take away from this, today, you have the ability to have very fast content creation mixed with real-time graphics. And, in our tool belt, we're utilizing a lot of these different game engines and pieces of software. And I want to just list them out right before we get started here. So obviously we're here with Autodesk, who is one of our favorite software developers. We use their Autodesk suite, Maya, 3ds Max, Motion Builder, all those. But I like to list this here for everyone to see so that there is an understanding of kind of if you're interested in some of the tech that we're using as we're going through here, or if you have any questions. So for camera work, we use Blackmagic cameras. We work a lot with DaVinci Resolve and DaVinci in particular. Motion capture that you're going to be seeing for the stuff that we're showing here today, Xsense suits and Manus gloves for all the finger data. We already mentioned we're using Unreal Engine 5 here. And then our hardware, we're all on NVIDIA-based hardware, and shout out to Puget Systems as well, who we work with as for our systems vendor. And just wanted to make a shout out here to Autodesk as well, as I'm happy to be here presenting and showcasing some of their software, as they are what's making this game possible in a lot of ways. And also to the tech as well with Puget Systems. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing here today, specifically with our game, when we're taking in massive amounts of data and all sorts of different things, we're utilizing their impressive hardware with NVIDIA chips to be able to actually crunch all that data, train our models, our machine learning models for our video game. And, we're very happy to have these partners. So obviously when you start with an IP, you obviously have to adapt your idea. And at the beginning, you either have a pre-existing IP or you just have an idea that you want to turn something into reality. And for our sake, we had our Chalk Warfare IP. And this existed only as a 2D medium. These were videos that people were watching and people were interacting with them. Fans were messaging us. They were asking for new weapons to put in the videos. And then it would take, as the video joked about, several years. It might take a year or two for us to actually implement a new weapon of some kind. It was a very slow video game in a way. Imagine if you were playing a video game and you drew something and then 2 years later you get to see it actually happen. So we wanted to bridge that gap and actually turn this into something interactive. And the next question we had to ask ourselves is, why should this be a game? Like, not everything needs to be a game. And that was a similar thing with virtual reality at the time too. When we worked on a lot of virtual reality projects, a lot of people were saying, hey, let's just jump in and turn this project into a VR experience. And you question, why, right? Are you getting anything more out of that experience? And this was a big thing for us to question, because making games is very hard. And the number one thing you want to actually focus on is your game fun, right? So the years that we spent prototyping, this was our number one concern, right? Is building the game to actually have the rules of the game be fun, have it not be something that already exists in the marketplace, have it be something that's unique. And the real unique part of our game came down to the drawing mechanic, right? So all of our R&D, all of our time at the very early stages was not obviously spent making it pretty, because that's not the point of early versions of video games. The point was actually just determining if it was fun. And you can see a fun GIF down below of some of the play testing very early on. We obviously just had gray box environments as we're level designing, and we had the ability to actually draw our own weapons. And this was after the first iterations of our machine learning algorithm that we developed to be able to design your own weapons as players. So our team would be able to jump in, play test with each other over the internet, and design our own weapons. And this went on for about 2 years in iterative forms to be able to determine how fun we could make this game and actually determine our game loop before we start the process of building this. And with that also came down to defining the rules of the world, which was very fun to me and anyone who might be a filmmaker here in the talk today, because you really get to build the world from the ground up. And with that, we were able to bring on some of our our awesome collaborators, particularly Olin Rogers, who is a director and writer, and he wrote Final Space on TBS, which we love working with Olin. He's a big collaborator of ours, so it was great to get to bring him in to actually build the world and the lore around our game. Uh, and with that also involved creating all of the characters. And one of the characters in particular is Stuart, who you saw in the intro demo video that we first saw at the beginning of this talk. And Stuart in particular is also, if you follow our YouTube channel, a character that exists in real life as we have a transmedia crossover. And developing Stuart, is based on the demands for our audience, because if you look if you see the GIF from the left here, you can see we actually have a series where he draws weapon suggestions from audience members. And we get a lot of audience members leaving suggestions of what he should draw next. So it was important to us to have this transmedia pipeline so that we could actually have the character exist played by the same actor. And with that required a lot of technological advancements, specifically just with Unreal Engine and utilizing and creating a new pipeline with Maya in particular, so that we could pull this off. And obviously that required software that we know and trust, right? So here you can see us using Maya to build out this character for Stuart so that we can have a replica, and not exactly a complete replica. We wanted to, change the facial identity a little bit because we didn't have to have an exact replica, but change the facial identity a little bit of the character, but then also allow it to be something that is possible to utilize in Engine as well as in Maya, so we can do animation in Maya and Unreal at the same time, depending on our pipeline that we're deciding to use for the cinematics versus the game development. So building out this pipeline took quite a bit of time, but thanks to advancements in both Maya and Autodesk tools, and then also advancements with Unreal Engine, we were able to build an entire workflow here that you can see we're able to use their MetaHuman pipeline, but with custom characters, which is quite awesome. It makes it very simple to be able to pull off some pretty wild facial animations with ease. You can see here, this is actually just from an iPhone 12, doing all the facial motion capture, as well as we'll have the character use a mocap suit or accent suit in particular to be able to link up and have everything run together to a point where we actually are getting around 80% of the performance in camera, which is really great for our cinematics as we're building out our video game. Now, with that, the last thing that we also needed to do was capture our flair with cinematics, because on our YouTube channel, we have a very specific style. And me as a director, I have a very specific style of how I go about my scenes. I do a lot of handheld camera animation. Things are very fluid, and I like to play around with the staging of the scene. And we built a pipeline that I'm going to showcase, and I'll be able to show as we open up the engine as well near the end of the talk. But we have a pipeline to be able to really capture this flair. And a lot of it starts with the camera animation and previs. And in particular, you can see some of the stuff that we're doing here in Engine, specifically with HBO, when we were working on previs for The Last of Us. And this involved being able to have both, in essence, facial animation live in Engine, mocap suit with virtual camera. And this is something that all runs in live on this small GIF that you can see here. You can see that all this is actually running in real time, so that you're able to see the actor, see the performance in Engine with the camera directly. So this is a pipeline that we set up so that we're able to record our cinematics and also record our animations for our game as we prototype and build the cinematics. And something that has been new to our pipeline that's very exciting is Autodesk's Flow Studio. Now, if you're not familiar with Autodesk's Flow Studio, that prior slide that I just showed, where we had the whole mocap suit, full facial animation, we had the camera tracking solution, everything was set up, and it looked like a lot of work, because it is. Well, now with Flow Studio, we actually can just stage our scenes with single shots. So in that GIF that you see up top, we're actually able to just record that. Flow Studio uses their algorithm to be able to build a biped model, actually create facial animation and track the camera, and you're able to stage scenes with previs in Unreal Engine or in Maya very, very quickly. So these were very early on as we were figuring out our camera angles. And as the director of that sequence that you saw earlier, we were building out all the staging. And this tool allowed us to do that very easily, which is quite cool and very new. It makes a big difference when you're able to just iterate really quickly. Now, a key aspect to our workflow here too is also just sharing assets. We mentioned that we have Stuart as a real character in the videos, and we also have the video game version of Stuart, for instance. Sharing assets between both the film and game has been a core concept of ours, and it's been quite cool as we're building out everything because it allows us to basically be building the game as we're also creating shorts and content and user-generated content for our audience, right? So we have a quick video to show, which is quite cool, that shows the set that we put together. And the next video that we'll be able to shows how we utilize this set, but it's cool because this set is built directly in Unreal Engine. And we have it matched in our software solution with Maya and 3ds Max as well, so that we're able to do both a production pipeline and a real-time pipeline as we're building out assets for both the content that we're making for our fans as well as the video game that we're developing. So we are here today on a physical set that directly matches the geometry inside of our video game. And today we're recording some cinematics. We've got our talent. He's here on set. He's got an Xsense motion capture suit on. He's got Manus gloves, and he's also got an iPhone on his face rig that's recording all of his facial animation, and we're getting all the body animation.
Some may even say that your art degree matters.
We're able to record all this, as well as audio, through a custom script we wrote with the click of a button. There's no frustration with how long we're recording. We just click record. The Xsense does all the work. We export the data, apply it to our character in Unreal Engine, and there's no cleanup necessary. We're taking what we get. We're doing some adjustments here and there to adjust the performance, but the Xsense is helping us out here to be able to just focus on recording our character. So what's cool is you can see that, both these mediums here thrive on these shared assets. And it's cool because our team, this is kind of a seamless process for our team too, because they're very similar industries in a lot of ways. And that might trigger some people. Now, obviously, they're not exactly the same mediums, right? In game development, you have to keep in mind that there's a lot of, it's a big difference when trying to make something that's fun and playable and interactive. But when it comes to the art side of things, obviously, you're just taking into account optimization and a lot of key aspects in that regard to be able to have things run fluidly. But you're still doing modeling in your favorite, software tools like Maya or 3ds Max, and it's a very similar process through it and throughout. So building this ecosystem allowed us then to kind of repurpose these assets and speed up the development process, and then also maintain, a similar look between the different mediums, which is quite cool. So if we build a high fidelity asset we might build a high fidelity asset with realistic textures for the actual shorts that we're producing for our audience. But then as we're doing our art style, we're able to build a custom script that can apply the slight painterly look that our game has, and then be able to have those direct assets that are optimized, be able to have in-game. And they look very similar, so the audience feels like they are similar assets because the geometry, the proportions, everything still match. And then obviously I mentioned the pipeline improvements as well. Being able to have a workflow here that's native to your artists with 3ds Max or Maya, but then also utilizing some of these free AAA capabilities that it's just honestly impressive that are available to everybody in Unreal Engine in particular. They're making amazing strides with uh, their MetaHumans pipeline to be able to get what would have cost so much money in cinematics, even just back 5, 10 years ago, is now basically possible with an iPhone that's from your pocket, getting facial animation data. So it's a quite a cool time to be utilizing a pipeline like this to bring your cinematics, your content to life, and then being able to utilize Maya 3ds Max to be able to actually customize the characters, which is what we've done for our game to be able to give it uh, a more polished look is really just the icing on top. So the last step to this then is part 3, which is bringing your audience with you, right? So having the existing IP was a massive advantage for us, but it obviously meant that we also need to keep our audience, following along with the process. And this is something that we're continuing as we are now starting to announce our video game, which is quite exciting. But throughout the past years, as we've been developing, we've been updating through being able to utilize those assets that we've been making in the game in these shorts that our audience has been enjoying, right? And these are updates then that can go throughout all of our social pages. And utilizing the pipeline, you can see here, like there's some wild visual effects in that. If you remember the set that you just saw, where we're doing a real-time keying, we're using 3ds Max and Maya with full camera tracks to be able to pull off these shots here. But then the models that are created, as we talked about earlier, all those models like the dummies that are there in the one to the right, those are all created for our game pipeline. So when we utilize those with our audience, we're actually also getting the assets to be able to, we're also making those assets to put inside the game. And that just kind of shows the entire process and how there's thought into the pipeline, but at the end of the day, the software and the pipeline itself is what's empowering us to be able to create more content. And lastly, some considerations for your audience's IP. So audience excitement, having their involvement. So, with step 2 here, with the involvement of the audience, we really have our platform on YouTube where our audience members are able to actually like leave questions or leave suggestions rather of what they want to see next. And we're able to take that into account specifically with weapon suggestions, with play testing, the community feedback. And then with that, we have audience feedback that's directly in the comments as we upload new content. And this is kind of like a self-fulfilled cycle then as we develop our game. And it all leads to us being able to make the product and make the project that we've always dreamed of, which is really quite cool. So we've got a live demo here as well that we're going to jump into. But I think what might be cool is if we jump into potentially some questions as well. Lucas, I think that'd be awesome for us to be able to jump into as we've got some time left.
Thank you, Sam, for sharing all that. I think it was really cool to see, and especially the previews and the fun videos you were able to share from the game and also from your work at So Crispy. I do have a question for you. So you mentioned using Flow Studio for previs work. What advantage does that provide, and how does that process compare to the traditional mocap?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Flow Studio is really cool in particular because, as these new camera-based tools are coming out, Flow Studio is a really cool tool that does the camera tracking, does everything that we normally would have to do with wires, right? It does it with software solutions. So all you literally do when, say I have got a shot idea, right? I say, okay, I want to previs out this scene that I have. And at a certain point, it's also just not even previs. You can also just take it to final. So at a certain point, I say, hey, I've got this scene I want to create. Maybe I have these 2 characters that they're interacting with each other, and I want to see how it looks. And it's very easy to pull my phone out and just record a shot, or a camera out and record a shot of that exact thing. Now with Flow Studio, you can upload that footage. Then you can analyze the actors in the scene. So you can actually click the different people, the different individuals, and then it will build a rig for that character that you can then use for your characters in your scene. So you're basically able to retarget those animations, get real animations with a camera track, put it in your shot very quickly without utilizing a suit or without utilizing any facial motion capture. And it's just a very quick solution to be able to pull off the what normally might have taken a lot of different steps, right? And the mocap in particular as well is really starting to look good to a point where you can at a certain point also use the mocap for final visuals that you get from Flow Studio. So that's also very cool. We're often very surprised and very excited when we see the mocap that we end up getting from it. And sometimes we end up just using that for the cinematics.
Nice, great. Yeah, thanks, Sam. I do see a question coming in from the audience. So for creating characters, are you using 3ds Max as well, or are you only using Maya software in your environment? And I know maybe you can also touch a bit more too on how like both of those tools play in your overall pipeline. Maybe you can share a bit more too besides on the character front, how they are being used.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the character work in particular, we are utilizing Maya primarily. I'm a big 3ds Max user, and there are a lot of 3ds Max users at the company as well. There's a little bit of a split, and the beautiful thing about the Autodesk products is you really can use both 3ds Max and Maya together in a lot of ways. So we do use 3ds Max a lot for different animation and assets and different rigging solutions. In particular, if I'm focusing on a scene. But then as for the character designs, the character creation, we're largely utilizing a pipeline with Maya in particular, because the advantage of that then too is that if we ever want to do very specific in detail animation of the face or of the body animation, we're able to really hone in on that with the animators that are used to that, the Maya ecosystem. So we kind of keep it specific with characters in that pipeline. And now in particular, you saw earlier in the project or in this deck here that we had a rig specifically for our characters. Now that rig actually is the MetaHuman rig. So it's very cool is that with the pipeline that you're able to, utilize if you're kind of doing this cross-pollination between Unreal and Maya, you're able to take the rig that Unreal has for their MetaHuman characters and bring it over into Maya so that you can do all your custom adjustments to the character, build out the texture set, do any modeling tweaks, and then you have that rig, which is a very high fidelity rig. I think it has somewhere around like 600 bones throughout the course of the face. But with that, you're able to do all the different animations that you want with the facial rig, and then you can hand key and hand adjust in Maya in that solution.
Perfect, nice. Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that. I do also have a question for you. So I know you touched on this during your presentation, but I'm curious if you can elaborate further on how, like, from you and your team, from your storytelling approach on YouTube, was there anything that didn't work or that you feel like really you had to adjust from going to more of the game format for trying to make this story come true?
Let me follow up with that. So your question is something that didn't work necessarily with story from the different medium change?
Yeah, exactly. Like more like, okay, so traditionally, like started on YouTube, this whole series. Was there anything as you're transitioning that more to the game format? Was there anything that you had to adjust, change up, kind of thing that you wanted to have, be more clear, I guess, or as you're like kind of preparing for this game?
Yeah, that's a great question because there is quite a bit. So First, I just want to say I touched on some things about just the medium change in particular. So if anyone here in the audience is like considering getting more into interactive, it is a very interesting medium change. And as you saw, like your priorities obviously shift quite a bit. When you're making a film, you're really focused on just making that experience of that 2D experience that you're watching be as awesome as possible, right? And as engaging as possible. And in particular, if you're making content on YouTube, your whole goal is to have that watch time be, long, as engaging as possible. So that's always been our goal, right? Now with game development, you're not necessarily focused on the end all polish because all of that stuff is very front loaded where you want your game to be as fun as possible and as engaging as possible to then allow it to carry through. So the one of the biggest moments for me when we were doing game development, when we were working on the early prototypes of the game was I have spent, years building out something that might be 30 minutes long of a story in a 2D format. And after we build out that, we get the team together to go film it. We have the scripts and everything. We film it. We edit it. We do the visual effects. We do the sound. We do the music. You do all this, and you have this polished product. And you might spend a year, making a film that's very rewarding when you're done with it. What was very interesting in game development was we would prototype this together, and then all of a sudden, we would open up the game one Friday as a playtest group with our company, and we'd maybe have 15 people in the playtest. And we'd experience fun for 2 hours, and it was unique. And I thought to myself, wow, it would take me 2 years to make 2 hours of content for a film. But we literally can open up the game again tomorrow and do the same thing. And it's completely new. And that was what was very rewarding when it came to the game development side of things. And I wanted to point that out in particular because I realize I haven't answered the question yet, but I wanted to point that out because what was really cool is then all the decisions that we started making for the story of the game and the story of the films in particular that we'll be producing alongside the game, they started to develop around making that experience more fun. So we have certain characters, certain enemies that we've created in the lore of our game, which is a little bit locked down at the moment, but I can share a little bit about it. Is there are some enemies, common enemies that are based out of the chalk entity, the chalk mineral, and we utilize those as NPCs in the game that you actually have to fight against. So at any given point in time, you might have these NPCs that start coming at you, and you have to fight them like a wave. And that was something that we introduced in the game first because we really wanted to have that addition. And then it actually allowed us to then come up with an awesome character design for the film. So that was an example of something where the game actually influenced the film more so than the other way around, which was a unique advantage for us in particular because we're, if you watch the Chalk Warfare videos in particular, they have a story, but they're not very deep in the world building. And we were able to really focus on the world building at the same time as we were making the game. So to answer the question, having the influence of the different medium actually did allow us to kind of take a reverse approach where something that we probably didn't really think of was going to work in the film can work because we actually built it out of a game mechanic instead and then realized it was quite fun. And then you almost have that experience when you're playing the game and you're like, wow, enemy is like really scary. And this moment where it happened and they popped out of the ground, like this was a scary moment. And then that just gives us a lot of vision then for the films as well.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for answering that and for sharing a little behind the scenes from your team. I thought that was really fun to hear about too. Nice. So if anyone else wants to ask any more questions in the chat, please feel free to do so. I'll ask one more question for Sam and then maybe we can jump into the demo. And then if we do see any more questions come through as well, we can, maybe I can bring them up for you as well. We can kind of get to them as we're sharing the game. But one last question for you. So I do want to ask as well, what type of specific techniques are you using for realistic camera work inside of Unreal Engine? Maybe a good segue actually of as you're pulling up some of the stuff like you said in Engine.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that might be best to actually show live. So I've got my screen sharing here, and we are actually in Unreal Engine at the moment. And with Unreal Engine, what's quite cool is we talked a lot about how you build out these scenes, right? And if you recall the intro from earlier in the talk, we had this full scene that, because we're building a game, this intro actually plays in real time. So here I am scrubbing through the entirety of the game intro. And you're basically seeing this in real time, right? Because a game is built to run in real time, right? So that whole intro that you saw is running right here. And what's quite cool is this is very empowering as a filmmaker because at any given point in time, I'm able to stage a scene, relight, restage, change the acting performance, change the lighting. It's very empowering. And just an example of how if I'm in this camera view right here and I can actually just take this camera so simply preview that scene, and then at any given point in time, get a different vantage point, a different view, and actually figure out the staging, right? It's in a way, it's kind of like playing God, where you're in this scene that you're able to just watch in real time. And then any lighting, any tweaks that you need to change. Right here, we have the character actually walk into a lighting path here. And you can just trigger that on and off. And you can see just the difference that you're able to produce. And as a filmmaker, this is quite a cool experience, right? And a lot of the filmmakers in my in my network have really adopted using this, using the Maya approach of bringing characters into this to actually be able to stage scenes for previs for their films or just their films in general, right? Because it's a very interactive experience. But then on top of this, we're really able to match kind of this look of taking, the cameras that we're pulling in here and then matching our look as filmmakers. So in particular, like having a widescreen view with, custom depth of field, right? That's something that you can do real time as you adjust the camera animation. And again, it's just such a cool experience and something that I only wish I had more available to me years ago when we were, shooting content and you'd have to visualize it and you're storyboarding something that is just on paper, right? So here we have a final product that's a final animation that matches our style because of these tools and because of the characters that we've been able to build in the software. And it really is quite cool. So any questions anyone might have on that, I'm more than happy to answer. But as you can see here, you're literally able to scrub through it and just match any style you want. And making different camera cuts, everything just on the fly.
This looks great, Sam. Love it. Cool. So yeah, I don't think I'm seeing any more questions come through. But I guess if there's anything else, Sam, do you want to share on Unreal? And in the meantime, too, we can do maybe a last call for questions, and then if not, we can close out as well.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's really the extent of the project here to show. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer. But yeah, overall, like, building out this pipeline and being able to utilize this software for game development has been a real treat, and it's very exciting to be able to show. And I think it should be really empowering to anyone who's trying to create anything. Here you can see something that honestly is very TV quality that you're just scrubbing in and out of and being able to see. So you can see I'm just able to make direct animation changes on the fly with these characters. And again, when you really want to do those tweaks, you're able to bring it into Maya and the traditional pipeline that everyone on this might be familiar with. But being able to see it in this format and then being able to actually interact with it in the game development pipeline is really quite cool.
Nice. Yeah, great. Thanks, Sam. Cool. So I do want to say a big thank you to you as well, too, for sharing all of this, going through the project and putting all this and sharing this with all of us. I think it was really cool to see, and I do want to thank you. Before we do close out, I'm actually going to launch a poll question. This is to kind of let us know if you would like to be contacted from someone from Autodesk, basically about any of the tools that Sam shared during his talk. Just let us know. We'd love to get in touch with you. But yeah, I also want to say a big thank you to everybody who joined. We have 2 more great sessions today that we have coming up. One for secure game development in the cloud using Autodesk Flow Capture. And then our last talk of the day is going to be with Nexon Games on building a production-aware editing pipeline. So yeah, please feel free to join us there. Actually, sorry, before we do close off, I am seeing one other question come through. So I'll let Sam answer that if you're down. So this question is, so I've been using Unreal for the past 8 years, and I'm looking for a job related to cinematic art in Unreal, and it's really hard to find specific jobs related to it. I've mostly worked in games. So maybe any advice for this person that you might want to offer based off the question?
Yeah, no, I think that's a similar boat for some people as they've kind of jumped into using Unreal. And your Unreal knowledge, if you have 8 years, it's really quite great. Something that I think might be worth noting is a lot of individuals I know that are in this world of creating cinematics, they actually have gotten a lot of work and really build their portfolio by creating projects similar to kind of what you're seeing here, we were able to build it in Unreal with this Maya pipeline, showcasing their cinematic ability on YouTube or on Instagram, on these different platforms. And it's actually led to, funny enough, like I've constantly asked individuals like, hey, like, where did you find that talent or where'd you find that person? And they go, actually, I found them because they were making awesome films online utilizing these tools. So I really do think that there is, from firsthand experience and also just being someone who's on the internet making content with our team on YouTube, I am a big fan of creating stuff for people to watch and enjoy because one, it feels empowering to you to get to make something creative, but also it showcases your ability and then ends up driving more work coming your way. So that would be my recommendation. And then on top of that, obviously just having a killer reel to be able to showcase is a big thing. You're in a visual medium, so being able to make an awesome reel in Unreal Engine can really help drive that and getting it out there.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Sam. I'll do a last call as well too for any questions. I want to make sure that since we have a bit of time, to make sure everyone has a chance to ask any questions for Sam here.
Yeah, ask away. Anything can work.
Cool. Actually, Sam, maybe in the meantime, I do have maybe one last question for you, and then we can close out if no one else has anything else. So maybe that kind of also maybe ties in a little bit to some of the stuff you just shared, but maybe it's like a final question for the group. Is there any advice that you could give filmmakers or creators looking to transition into more interactive experiences from their content? Maybe it kind of touches on a bit of what you just talked about, but maybe a nice like closing word or anything for the group that we have joining today.
Yeah, I think just in general, even with the state of the industry, I think something that might be cool to share just from my experience. Over the years, I've been a big proponent of all this technology, right? Like it was a little abnormal to be using Unreal Engine, for instance, early on in passive 2D experience, right? We were making content and we thought, hey, Unreal Engine's like starting to look like game cinematics are starting to look like films. So we can use game cinematics to be able to make our films, and then we'll be able to make them faster and cheaper, and that's cool. It was very abnormal at the time to do that because it's an abnormal pipeline. And that's a very simple example to what I think is going on right now, just with, everything in the world of AI and new tools. And it's almost like hard to keep up with everything that's changing, right? I think the biggest advice I would give is really just focusing on making the stuff you want to make, because there's never been a better time to be just truly empowered by all this software. When you really look at the lens of, hey, this stuff's helping me make something faster and cooler and better, it is quite cool and quite empowering. It is a little daunting for somebody that might not, use Unreal Engine, for instance, and maybe you come from, the traditional pipeline, more or less, or maybe you come from Unreal, but you don't necessarily use like the traditional pipeline for building films, whatever it may be. It is a little bit daunting to look at some of this new software that's coming out and you go, oh, there's another thing that now I need to learn, or there's another tool that, is a little misunderstood. But when you look at it through the lens of just being able to make your stories and make your content, it really is quite empowering. And even just with what's going on with, AI, machine learning algorithms at this point in time, it's really been empowering as a creator. Even just being able to have like these LLMs that, all the big tech companies are helping subsidize for everybody to use, whether it be like Google Gemini or, any of those Claude. It's quite cool. You're able to take, these questions that you might have about trying to learn how to use Unreal Engine. Like I had a question about Unreal Engine the other day and was able to jump in, and I've been using Unreal Engine for 10 years and still I have questions, right? So even using AI to just assist on you making a better product by asking it these questions and it answering is really empowering. So I would say no matter the technological advancements that may feel daunting, it really is an empowering time to be making content. And with that, I think I'll leave it there. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask.
No, that was great. I actually do. There's a funny question that just came through that I think we'll end on a fun note. So for creative fuel, what is your favorite burrito and from where?
My favorite burrito?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been chasing after this burrito spot that used to be right next to my college back when I was in college. And I have not had a burrito like that ever since. So you're now reminding me that maybe I need to head back over there. It was Alberto's.
Nice.
And it
We'll
was
keep an
right
eye
near
out.
my
Yeah.
school. Yeah. So it was really quite good. But yeah, love that question, by the way.
Great, nice. Well, Sam, another huge thank you to you for joining us, for sharing all this. I think it was really great to see this. To everybody joining us, huge thank you to you as well for tuning in. I'm seeing actually another question come through, so we'll get to that. Sorry, guys, I keep on closing up and I'm cutting you off for
We've
your
got a few
questions.
minutes, so if any of them come
Exactly, yeah,
through,
please
we're
keep
able
them
to answer
coming.
them.
Yeah. So I'm currently working on a game, and we are a new startup company, and they're thinking to use Flow Studio for cinematic animations. Just like to know your thoughts on this.
I think it's a great idea, especially if, you know, the higher end solutions that exist, right? There's like the passive dot, like you have all the way up to where James Cameron is in like a big volume doing all of these crazy motion capture techniques, and they're doing it underwater and they're doing all these things, all the way to where now you can just record with a camera. Like, it really is dependent on your needs and what you might have for your scene. But I will say, like, the tools are very impressive. um, Even on our YouTube channel, we actually utilized Flow Studio recently, if you would like to check it out, for a little previs video that we did on our most recent YouTube video. And you can check that out. We show how we utilized it, and we just took a simple shot of me actually on like a pillar, and we recreated a visual effects shot out of it. And the animation was great from the ground up that we were able to get out of it. So there, with any new tool like Flow Studio, they're obviously in development, and there's a lot of things that are happening with it. Now it's obviously using a vision-based solution. So it might not pick up like very small movements, but it will pick up the movements very well. Like, we're often surprised, and it does get the face as well. So utilizing it, especially in a world where you have multiple characters, and it might not be cost effective to have like a lot of suits, right? Or if you maybe you have one suit, or you don't have any motion capture suits, utilizing a tool, especially like Flow Studio, allows you to like just focus on like framing the shot, feeling good about it, and then put it through the software. I would highly recommend it. It is a breeze to use that software. You quite literally take the shot, upload it to their service, click the characters, and it builds it for you. So I'd highly recommend it.
Nice, thanks, Sam. All right, great. I don't think I've seen any more questions come through, so I think we can probably close it there. Like I said, thank you everyone for joining. I'll be sending the recordings of this talk to you by email, so you'll receive the recording after the event. And then also we'll be posting on our YouTube channel as well too. So basically you'll have the recordings not just from this session, but every session that we've had overall for this series that we're hosting. So again, big thank you to Sam, big thank you to all, and I'll invite Sam for a few, I guess, closing words to end us off.
Awesome. Well, again, it's been great to be here. Thank you guys so much for taking a listen and learning a little bit about our game if you haven't heard about it, or if you haven't seen the series. I highly recommend checking out the videos if you're interested, and you can follow along with the development of this project. And for anyone who's in this sphere, good luck on your projects, and thank you so much again for tuning in.